All right, we are live here. This is our Saturn format is basically open phones. Saturnday. So Infinite Plane Saturnday, open phones. Pretty much anything we talked about during the previous week. And as usual, you can call the number or you can go into Discord. And after this live stream ends, we're probably going to stay in Discord and go deeper into things in the voice chat if anyone is interested. Henry on my Twitter feed posted this. He gave a credit to somebody named Foundring, which might be a website. Hantavirus is an anagram for rat anus HIV. That's just an anagram. But the real big news today, and this is one of the greatest examples we've seen of concurrent programming in a long time, is the unveiling of the golden Trump statue is being remarked upon by many in a very critical way because you have these evangelicals who are praising a golden calf. But on TV, on The Boys, the Homelander character, who's based on Trump, as I talked about, has a golden statue of himself presented. And normie news consumers and observers and film critics are noticing this. And their takeaway is going to be either, derp, we're in a sim, or they're going to say it's just life imitating art or art imitating. They're going to make some kind of like vague cliche statement. But the thing is, the reason why I'm even watching that show is it contains copious predictive programming for future fake events. And it was the final 3 episodes of season 4 that foreshadowed Butler, so much so that the show changed the title of the last episode, Assassination Run, because it was all about this plot to take him out. And if you look at the thumbnail from that episode, it has the Homelander, beaming at the camera with blood on the right side of his face. Like, where have we seen that before? Kind of reminds me again of like Mickey 17, where you had this Luigi-esque character shoot the Trump-esque character, and the Trump guy has a streak of blood on his cheek and he's posing for the cameras. So this is what people not in the know call predictive programming. But we use the term concurrent when it's happening at the same time. And it has, I think, more serious implications if you're going to talk about the role of this propaganda, not just as product placement for future fake events, but actually creating some kind of an echo chamber. Jamarian says, is this not further evidence Trump is the reincarnation of Apollo? I mostly concur with that, but what I'm not saying like Apollo is real, but they do in fact apply various, what in the occult they would call them God forms or archetypes, onto our leaders. So he is being worshipped, yes, in a very real way. In the modern magical traditions and even in Freemasonry, they have the worshipful master. The high priest and the high priestess are said to be embodiments of the sun and moon. And the idea that he would be identified with the sun god is very consistent with this cult. And he is, in fact, with the golden hair, the golden towers. I mean, if you look into him and his house where he has the Apollo stuff, it's not hard to attach him to all of that and more. I mean, we've been deconstructing the Trump character for a long time. And like many world stagers, like Elon Musk is another one we talk about, he's an amalgamation. Like Musk, you would say, that's some Werner von Braun combined with Tony Stark, combined with probably Henry Ford, some Jack Parsons, and you can see these various elements coalesce. And yeah, Trump is a composite character. He's not some just random independent individual. He is an active participant in the theater of Psywar. And a lot of people are still caught up in the movie, and we're not really there anymore. And they notice things like, okay, the Homelander has a statue, the Trump statue comes out. It's just, to them, it's just an eerie coincidence. It's ironic. There's this magic word, coincidence. It's like, yeah, it is a coincidence. We can see that. What we're saying and what we can demonstrate is that it's an intentional coincidence. But to say it's a coincidence means nothing is this sort of a, I want to say mind virus. It's a guardrail they've installed in people's minds where they hear coincidence and they go blank. And it reminds me of Westworld, when the synths who are trapped inside of the simulation see something that contradicts their concept of the world. Their programming overrides and they say, that doesn't look like anything to me. So if you say coincidence around a normie news consumer, they're going to say, that doesn't look like anything to me, because their pattern recognition has been shut off. They've been told, oh, recognizing patterns, that's just a vestige from your days as a pattern recognizing monkey. You can go ahead and ignore the patterns. If it's important, Big Brother will tell you, and it'll be transmitted through the black mirror. So just keep your focus on the black mirror. That's the systemic gaslighting. But we know better, and the fact that the series has previously predicted things only underscores this. So to me, it's not a shock, it's not a surprise, my mind's not blown. I'm not reaching for simulation theories to explain a glitch in the matrix, because we know what this matrix is. It's a propaganda matrix augmenting the real world. And it has no bearing on the real world other than that which we put into it. So if it's evidence of a sim, it means that you're on the wrong side of the screen. It means that you're so centered in their internalized simulation that a glitch in it is processed by you as a glitch in reality. And no, that's not exactly what's happening. But that's been the go-to response for so many people for so long. I was just noticing on my Twitter account, I have an alien talking to a penguin. I put that up there quite some time ago. And I would offer myself up as an ambassador, as Obama has, should there actually be some kind of alien arrival. But as I said, it was going to be a massive nothing burger, and look what they did. They gave people a video of like a flare with the smoke trail, like recorded in black and white. And then you have people saying, oh, that's one of those angels with 8 wings. So you have, people are worshiping it because it's an angel. Others are like, no, it's a demon. No, it's a transdimensional. No, it's a firework, basically. And they didn't know. And one key point here is that all the experts who fell for the fake UFO stuff are the same ones that say that Apollo 11 was real, that the space station is real. So you have to consider the value of the opinions of these people. Like, why are they perceiving themselves to be authorities over you? Well, it's because if you're not mainstream, you're treated as some kind of pariah, conspiracy theorist, or some threat to society because you're basically mentally ill. I mean, they've made these correlations that a mental illness is a new form of radicalization, but you catch it by being online where it's not regulated enough to prevent certain mind viruses from getting to you. It's always like the Discord radicalized them. Reddit radicalized them when it's a leftist shooter. So I posted this on the 7th. There is Donald Trump, alien barbecue. You have a lot of religious people waving the execution device, and then you have tinfoil hatters, and Trump's just there happily serving empty hamburgers for the Trump-teenth time. It's been nothing but since this thing has started. And I'm not disappointed because I didn't have my hopes up. I'm not addicted to hopium. I'm not waiting for some revelation. So here we go. Gary Peterson says, the dedication of Donald Trump's golden statue is the most inspiring event in American history since Christ's Sermon on the Mount. Now we're free to publicly worship our chosen Savior without fear of persecution, just as Scripture commanded us. I think he's being a little sarcastic. But just the optics of building a golden statue to yourself and having evangelicals pray over it, like how is this going to pass? It has to be intentional. This is just really bad writing. Eric Kripke, this is discussing film, 2.8 million followers. So this isn't going by unnoticed. And this is not just predictive. This is concurrent. And what that implies is not just the timing of it is coordinated, but this must have been planned in advance because the show was recorded how long ago? So how long ago was the statue planned? And we brought this up last night. You have Representative Luna, who is the face of the interdimensional alien invasion UFO file release that didn't come true. And I said she's out there as the designated lunatic, like MTG was before her. And MTG has kind of been phased out. She's gone anti-Trump, so now you bring in Luna, who got her start wearing MAGA bikinis and posing for the camera. But now, it turns out she changed her name to Luna in 2019. So she's the face of the UFO files, and her name is Luna. And a lot of it involves photography from the lunar missions. And of course, Luna, Loony, Lunatic, it's kind of a world stagey name. And I just think this looks like foreplanning. Like, what I'm saying here is that we're living through a script that was written many years ago. So technically nothing should shock you or surprise you because everything is pre-planned. And when I say everything, I mean the focal points of the news cycles, the fake events. There's a lot of real stuff, obviously. I mean, you can trust the news when they tell you about the traffic or the weather and local affairs. What we're specifically referring to are the big national news stories that blow up disproportionately. There's a big distinction between real news and fake news, that we actually have hoax indicators. We have a nuanced breakdown of it before we make that determination. So you cannot accuse us of calling everything fake, while we can accuse you of calling everything real. So Eric Kripke, Kripke, reacts to evangelical leaders praising a gold statue of Trump. In the same week, people praised a golden statue of Homelander in The Boys. Quote, seriously, what the F? So let's see. And I have here top 11 Trump predictive programming examples. And I posted that because, of course, the Homelander is one of them. So let's see what kind of responses we get. Godfather says, we are witnessing The Boys happening in real life with Trump's statue. Next we'll have a Trump Bible. The Boys stopped being satire and became a weekly documentary. Now again, this thing, as I have other tweets that reference this, they finished filming prior to anything Trump's doing right now. People are saying reality is becoming stranger than fiction. No, that's not the case. Your reality has been augmented with fiction your entire life. And now you're noticing something because it's just glaringly obvious. But to us, this is just every day. This is not even that big of a shock. Again, Trump Homelander. And when the Butler, Pennsylvania thing went down, the series changed the title of the episode in deference to Trump. Deprogrammed Truther, finally back to work, catching you live. Thanks for keeping it together. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for helping. The IPS think tank is at a very important phase where we're now actually actively working on networking and growing our off-world stage presence. And to that end, I'm turning on the 24/7 audio stream again. And it's going to be specific content. Like, it's not just going to be replays. It'll have replays, it'll have clips. And by the way, the clips are auto-generated. And I had a Google alert for one of my own clips that was auto-generated by Substack and auto-posted somewhere. So I can see the system working already. But I want to include interviews and group voice chats on the 24/7 feed, which I'll be introducing this weekend. And by the way, phones are open. New number 1-888-886-HOAX. Joined by Anti-Flurf Troll, says ho 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 penguins. Speaking of anti-flurfs, MC Toon reached out to me on Facebook. Something about, oh, you're still alive. And I don't know if it was like, hey, I missed you, or damn, you're not dead. Like, it was kind of ambiguous. But I don't think he's unreachable. And I considered contacting him and scheduling a conversation, but I don't want to talk about the shape of the earth. There's more important things to talk about, like the fakeness of the news. But these individuals are so situationally unaware, it's not going to go anywhere. And they can just laud their faux superiority. I mean, you have to stay informed or you're lost. Case in point, the Morgile. So the Morgile was a very active content creator in the flat earth groups, and then he got into mud flood. And he's been out of the loop for some time. I saw his last video. Just, the usual stuff. You get pulled over, your license is expired, just a bunch of stuff. I mean, the guy sounds like he's been through hell. And then he has a dog, and it's really hard to travel alone when you're a dog. You can't get rooms and stuff. And apparently he tracked his dog waste into the RV. He got kicked out. So here he is abandoned in the rain in New Orleans, talking about a situation. And I was happy to hear that he's actually keeping up with the content creation, not just focusing on his Odyssey. And he mentions Charlie Kirk. And he mentioned that before the event, he was suddenly flooded with a lot of Charlie Kirk content. And asked anyone if they thought that was peculiar. And I'm thinking that's a perfectly valid question, and it's a good observation. It might be 6 months too late, but look what 6 months does. So I'm just, I give him a pass on that. I'm like, good for him, because you really should be keeping your head in the game here. And next thing I know, he's writing a love letter to Candace Owens and basically offering his condolences for Charlie. So I'm like, okay, you totally missed it on this one. You missed the bus. There's a lot of catching up to do. And I don't know if it's too late. Like, if you have the wrong operating system and you make assumptions about what's presented as far as its essential reality, you get spun down these rabbit holes to where next thing you know, you're reaching out to Candace Owens as some kind of paragon of free speech and truth. And, it's like, okay, where's the discernment here? They Lie We See says, message to Lloyd, become an auto-hoaxologist. Oh, Lloyd is a dyed-in-the-wool red pill truther. It's in his veins. He's not going to change. But I like having him around because I think it's important to be able to point out the distinction between the points of view. Because what he reveals, and what we talk about all the time, is that your point of view is going to constrain your interpretations of events to a limited set of options, because it's not inclusive of the significant things like media fakery, special effects, concurrent programming, predictive programming, and more importantly, and this is the one they're still missing, the long-term program that is being implemented, that we're living through. So if you assume that these current events are actually current and weren't previously planned, you would be wrong. And this statue coinciding with the statue is highly suggestive of the statue being planned years ago. Well, how does that even make sense? Well, because all the drama you're seeing is planned years ago. That's the formula. And we're retro auto-hoaxing the 20th century with the Great Deconstruction Project. And this is formulaic, it's standardized. There's an entrainment between entertainment and fake events. And what's more, you could describe it as a collusion between government, news media, and mass entertainment. And this goes back many decades. So if you didn't know that, it means that you weren't paying attention, you were misdirected. And this is how it works. You're in Westworld. You're a synth. They keep you locked in the 24-hour cycle, and you have no continuity. And they don't break out of the simulation until they start remembering and piecing together previous events. And then they recognize, okay, our entire situation here is basically a simulation. Duet says, I Googled Apollo Caesar and I found a song called Invincible by Omar Apollo featuring Daniel Caesar. Well, speaking of Caesar, Julius Caesar's birthday, again JC, was 7/13. Trump was shot on 7/13. Harrison Ford was playing a president in Captain America Brave New World, and he's at the podium when he's shot at, and he ducks beneath the podium like Trump did. That trailer aired on 7/12. So after 7/13, they changed the trailer. Harrison Ford's birthday, 7/13. 7/13 is an interesting date if we look at some of the big psyops, like the two blackouts in Manhattan, 42 years apart to the day. There's some deep symbolism here attached to that day. And if you get into the numbers and stuff, it's pretty nuanced, and they do place great significance on certain dates, because this script has layers, and much of it seems coordinated astrologically. Do you remember Isabel Ann in our chat on 7/13/2024? She mentioned the position of the star Algo or Algol. Which one is it? No, it's AL. Let me bring this one up. She mentioned it moments before Trump was shot. And she said its position is suggestive of the head wound. Now, this is very consistent with what we're actually looking at because, yeah, we're looking at fake news. We're looking at systemic fakery with psyops, but there is this esoteric subtext. ALGOL, known as the demon star, it's actually a famous triple star 93 light years from the Earth. An eclipsing binary. Algol, demon star. I didn't know it was called demon star. Whatever that means, because the term demon didn't have its negative connotations until more recently. Okay, here we go. Etymology here. The name comes from an Arabic word meaning the ghoul. Okay. Likely due to its strange, changing brightness. But anyway, I was just bringing up the Caesar connections. Now, it goes deeper because in 2017, in Caesar in the Park, in the staged play, Julius Caesar was a guy that looked just like Trump. And Laura Loomer jumped on stage and interrupted it because in the scene where they stab him to death, she said, "Oh, you guys are going to cause somebody to go after Trump." So Laura Loomer has been calling out Donald Trump assassination attempt predictive programming for a long time. Not surprisingly, in the lead up to Butler, she was highlighting the Atlantic magazine that had a lot of head wound foreshadowing. Anti-Flurf Troll says his trolls are getting Flurf numbers and he keeps harassing them. Are you talking about McToon? Well, it's kind of sad that they've only exclusively focused on that one particular debate with a small demographic of people who are even, really on that. Like, the whole flat earther term is something of a misnomer. It was just this way that they were just broad brushing a group of skeptics who were audacious enough to question some of the biggest claims of media, in our lifetimes. And that broad brushing missed the nuance that not everybody was jumping to that conclusion. It was an open question, and it was more about casting doubt on what we were shown with valid reasons. And there's no settled model or settled opinion on this, but they create the straw man, and they spend all day attacking it. And honestly, people who go after straw men are either manipulators or ignorant. Because if you really did have a strong case to firmly dispel the entire thing, you would do the steel man. But the steel manning of the argument would necessarily include the question of media fakery writ large, not just space, but on the ground as well. And that gets into what we get into, metascript, psyops, and they don't believe in psyops. It's like psyops are real. So it's not something you can just opt out of believing. That's denialism. So I don't really value the opinions of people who are super strong in their opinions about space travel, but think the news is real. I should have been monitoring their reactions to the UFO stuff. I bet they all believe in UFOs. And I use the word believe because it's not like a scientifically held premise. It's just a sci-fi superstition. Curterfest says, I heard Trump's new phone isn't coming out and he refuses to return people's deposits of $500 each. Typical Trump. I haven't heard about that. I was looking forward to getting a new passport, the one with Trump's mugshot on it. Duet says, I mentioned IPS in the live chat of Trow Promi a few days ago. His audience are ready to leave the madness behind. Yeah, leave the world stage behind. That's the objective here. In fact, we should use that because it's become very clear to me that the truthers are actually in a cult and they don't even know it. They're happy to call mainstreamers brainwashed, zombies, NPCs, and cultists, but they don't seem to realize that they're in an alt cult. They're alt NPCs, and we need to shine a light on these distinctions and then let them make up their own minds. Daylight says, I'm working on a German auto-hoaxology channel. Excellent. Well, I'm going to be posting all of the clips on the video clipper site. So if you're into video clipping, it's something that we're implementing now. All right, let's move on. Litz Evo says, insane how the boys predicted season 5 and that it was written before it came to be. So again, we're looking at a very big channel, 2.8 million followers, drawing attention to something we discuss every single day, something that some people say are just coincidences. Nothing to see here, don't look, it's just a coincidence. If you look, you're crazy. It's like, no. You've been gaslit into submission and you no longer rely on your intellectual independence nor your own senses. Your head has gone through the black mirror. You're drowning in the sea of irrelevance. And that's what they want. It's like this refusal to recognize the patterns and draw the right conclusions. But we have done that. We've done the legwork. We've established a third perspective. You have the mainstream and alt in one closed system, and then there's the off-world stage. And we've established a firm enough philosophical basis that it's now scalable. We can invite people in. So the Homelander does have a Bible. Now, I know Trump had a Bible, and I know he's always signed Bibles, but this is the Trump edition Bible. The Homelander does have a Bible. So you got the head wound, the Bible, and again, this is a character who is openly based on Trump and has been for years. It's the only reason I paid attention to him. But this does underscore the significance of the timing of it, as this person said. And this person doesn't have the frame of reference to understand what they're seeing. Insane how they predicted it before it came to be. They don't have a framework because they think these events are organic. These events are organic, they're real, and they're just coincidences. And like, no, this is evidence that our history is planned in advance. This is a minor one out of many I could point to. And I'm not trying to convince people who can't already see it. If you've already shut off your pattern recognizing monkey brain, as they call it, if you no longer perceive the collusion between entertainment and government, you can stay on the world stage. I'm not trying to turn believers into knowers, but this is something of a paradigm shift, transitioning from a passive believer to an active knower, or if there's not enough information to know something, an informed disbeliever. This is how you should be if you're a skeptic. This should be your stance. Skeptics today, though, are so, I guess, conditioned to accept the premise that mainstream has some sort of fundamental authority, that their version of skepticism is calling out conspiracy theorists. And they don't look at the premise that they rest their various opinions on. It's just this lack of self-awareness in the system. These Truman show, I guess, subjects. They're like guinea pigs. It's like Truman, the Truman Show. They're like Trumans. And these Trumans don't know they're in a show. And so they don't have any reason to conclude anything more than just a coincidence. It's a very limited perspective. And normally when there's a psyop, there's this hilarious thing where conspiracy theorists will say, oh, it's revelation of the method they have to tell us so they don't catch bad karma for the things they're going to do. And it's like, so they had to tell you about the Trump statue? Give me a break. Busy says, hey, Tim, I was reading Robert Anton Wilson and saw he was on Bill Maher's Politically Correct on an episode that was supposed to have Timothy Leary, but Leary was too sick. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know Bill Maher and Raw ever spoke. So if you don't know who Robert Anton Wilson is, he wrote The Cosmic Trigger, which associates the number 23 with the dog star and the idea that the dog star itself is somehow transmitting signals. And if you pick up on it, it facilitates, or rather initiates, some kind of acceleration of your consciousness's evolution. And Timothy Leary was also a part of this concept. He was friends with Robert Anton Wilson. But Robert Anton Wilson has a lot of interesting work kind of in the New Age area. But it has to do with, like, his thinking is actually very much, I think, advanced in certain areas. Like when it comes to cognitive bias, understanding conspiracy theories. He wrote the Illuminatus trilogy. The popularity of Illuminati conspiracy theories can really be traced to Robert Anton Wilson. It's like this mostly fictional take on the Bavarian Illuminati. One of the first books I read by him was called Coincidence, because I was trying to, understand synchronicities, and he has some great perspectives on it, although I recall he leans heavily into quantum entanglement and double slit stuff, and I really don't think that's super valid, but it's just a model. It's an analogy, I guess. But he made the point about how to avoid paranoia and how to avoid falling into these types of cognitive traps where the world gets increasingly dangerous, to become more paranoid. And he said, if you state to yourself that you're being gang stalked by the government, and then you have a notebook and you write down every bit of evidence you have for it, over the course of the next week, you are going to find evidence to support that. And his axiom was, what the thinker thinks, the prover proves. He even said you could convince yourself of almost anything. Like you're going to find a quarter on the street, and you will. And there's nothing magical about this. It has to do with the automated process of selectively noticing things. And this is a programmable bias that you should take control of. And most people do when they visualize, when they plan. But if you're very passive, you can be programmed. That's why I've been saying, control your mind or someone else will. But you're a hackable animal. And they don't need a chip in your head to do it. It's all just behavioral modification. Like I've been saying for the last few days, the human race, and this is a monumental achievement by the PSYOP entertainment complex, 8 billion people were simultaneously crate trained. That was dog training for humans, and we all went through it, and they had a 100% success rate. Erica Creech says, another attempt at the correspondence dinner. Now they're monitoring the reporters to see who sees. Well, they do account for people not believing it, so they fill the scene with subplots. The metascript, the fake events that are all contained on this metascript, when they're presented to us, there are planted subplots for the people who see through the fakery. And you know what we call those? Conspiracy theories. So if you're still chasing conspiracy theories, you're actually going along with subplots. You're still mind controlled. Oh, by the way, TTS is on. Text to speech on Super Chats. They Lie We See says, waiting for the monkey rat mutation strain of the Hanta. Yeah, did you hear about that horrible hantavirus anagram? I don't want to say it again. We'll just say rat AIDS. Although, we have to be fair. The deer mice aren't rats, and they are adorable. They've got these, big round ears. Like, I hope that they don't pull that card, because I don't think I want to see these critters. I don't know what they would do. I thought it was relegated to only a certain segment of deer mice in the Southwest, and that you could only catch it if you're in like a shed where they've left a lot of droppings, but we'll see. The X-Files foreshadowed it, and there's some kind of X-Files coming out in June. So we'll get to that. We have it all. Deep Program Truther says, Tim, saw a Facebook reel 2 nights ago, someone named Flat Earth Pete. It was one of your shows or commentary on the ISS and bubbles in space from 7 or 8 years ago. I left a comment. Yeah, Flat Earth Pete. I don't know if I know who that is. But yeah, that was my first public comment on the fake ISS at the city council. I actually called into city council by Zoom. My screen was black and my audio was muffled. So I'm going in person next time. And I was just trying to let them know that we are the subject of a mind war, a never-ending onslaught of psychological operations. And that Charlie Kirk's alive. Busy 56 says Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and Papas was on the episode as well as David Cross, the comedian. They talked about LSD and Leary a lot. Okay, so, well, what Robert Anton Wilson wrote about, and it had to do with drugs, is what he called like the Eighth Circuit model of the mind. I'm not sure the specific title of it, but they correlated drugs with what they called they divide each hemisphere into four, and the left and the right. And his premise was that the left brain was for our terrestrial evolution and survival, but the right brain is for transcendence and our future evolution and the idea of cosmic consciousness. And that acid would relate to the furthest side on the right side of the brain, with like marijuana being the gateway, the Fifth Circuit, whereas opiates, alcohol, cocaine, caffeine, etc., stimulants would be relegated to left brain stuff. So he had this interesting idea, and honestly, it's very consistent because I think the guy was a Crowleyite, a Thelemite, and he does write a lot about occultism and the practices of that involve, as Aleister Crowley prescribed in his channeled book, if you believe it was channeled, drugs. Drugs is a huge part of their religion, and it kind of fits in with Leary. The Sirius Dog Star thing is intriguing separately because he calls it the cosmic trigger because he says it's the dog star that sends the signals that wake you up. Now, if you think about that, in the Truman Show, it's the dog star that falls from the stage. It's the stage light that stands for the dog star that triggers his subsequent awakening and then breaking free from the show itself. But then the movie, the number 23, follows after that. And it's not related to the Truman Show, but it's the same actor. And this is where I really start to note, okay, they're doing this thing here where the same actor is a conduit for the same body of symbols, movie after movie. And in Jim Carrey's case, he has this very strong association with the dog star. The number 23 is about a character driven mad by a book called The Number 23, which is just full of a guy's synchronicities with the number 23. Well, the cosmic trigger that I alluded to is Robert Anton's book, which is actually about his non-stop sequence of synchronistic occurrences with that number. So in a way, the movie The Number 23 is about Robert Anton Wilson. That's the connection. And I think it is even further highlighted by the final scene when Jim Carrey finds out who wrote the book, and he kind of looks like him. But Wilson actually passed away that January. It's like January 11th or something, a few weeks before number 23 came out. So there's no way to ever find out if he knew about it. Okay. We see Raw is not Cywar aware. No, well, Wilson died like 15 years ago. And of course not. In fact, he even talked about his belief in the overview effect and how when he talks about the drugs, how the marijuana, he says, opens up the Fifth Circuit. It brings you into the right brain. And he said that the astronauts who had the overview effect were breaking into that circuit. So no, he was very much, and you can't blame people because their frame of reference is very much monopolized. They didn't have, at that time, access to a lot of the information we have. I find like William Cooper, he could be completely legitimate. There's no reason to think he's necessarily an agent, but he was in a closed system with limited access. And what we're accessing, what informs our point of view, is information outside the purview of mainstream and alternative media. Because again, they don't have a perspective inclusive of media fakery, news bending, history bending, special effects, psyops, and of course, concurrent predictive programming and the significance of these, beyond just the coincidence explanation. Busy says, I'm reading Cosmic Trigger 3. He's talking about the Meringian coat of arms with frogs and its relation to the Fortean phenomenon of frogs falling from the sky. Made me think of Magnolia. Yeah, I remember Magnolia, a Tom Cruise movie, and the frogs that rain down. Isn't that from? Because I know that the the Keck people, the Groypers of the frog face, were making a big deal about plagues of frogs. Maybe it was some Old Testament verse about it. Curtifus says, Tim, didn't you say you were in the Masons? My father was a worshipful master. Yeah, I joined the Masons shortly after my stint in the military. I actually got the command sergeant major to sign me in because I didn't have any family. I had to find people to sponsor me. I joined the Masons almost concurrent with the Thelemic group, and I was really, I think, not really surprised, but it was kind of startling to see the similarities in the structures of the initiatory societies. And it's the structure that I think is most important to look at here. The lodge that I was a part of was in this place in southern New Mexico called San Marshal, and in the 1920s it had been flooded, so it's a ghost town. And then they now operate in the city I'm in now. And when they do their third degree, they actually go down to the original location. So you're in this old cemetery in a ghost town under the full moon where they do their raising rites. And so it was in the middle of the desert, and really impressive when you get into it. The whole thing is based on theater, stagecraft. The Masons call it the craft. Well, it's really stagecraft. Weirdly enough, after being raised, there was when I was doing the oaths, there was a black cat that walked through the cemetery and crossed our path. I wanted to take it home with me, but I carpooled, and the other guy, Brother Craig or whatever, was like, I'm allergic to cats, which I don't believe. People who say they're allergic to cats are usually lying. They probably just don't like the smell of kitty litter. I don't know. But I should have taken it. But after Blue Lodge, I got into, I kind of, at the same time, I was involved in this other group. It's a public speaking group. And there I met some Shriners, and I made friends with this one who was a former potentate. And it was a public speaking thing. Like, it's called Toastmasters, where you have this sort of semi-formal breakfast meeting or lunch, and somebody gives a speech and everybody critiques it. And I was trying to get over my fear of public speaking. And that's where I came across the Shriners, and I wanted to learn more. And I got their sponsorship to go Scottish Rite. And then after I got into the Scottish Rite, I kind of fell away from it. I didn't want to put on the fez. I didn't want to ride around in a tiny clown car. I was just trying to research. And I'm not really a joiner. Like, I'm not really into clubs. But you know what was weird? In the Scottish Rite Temple, the first thing they did is they gave me a number and a clipboard and instructions to go downstairs to get the cap, the little cap that they wear. When I go down there, I'm in the basement, and there's just one person handing out the caps, and there's just shelves and shelves and shelves full of empty mason jars. Like, I don't know what the hell that meant, but I'm just like, mason jars, what the hell is this? I never really figured it out. And one person alluded to something I'd never heard of, and he called it green language. In fact, a couple of weird things happened at the time that I took to be a little disconcerting. Okay, for example, one of the main symbols, of course, is the double-headed eagle. And, you have these titles, and a lot of this stuff is kind of rooted in biblical lore. Scottish Rite's a little more eclectic. But weirdly enough, after the event, I go down to my vehicle, and I find a Smirnoff bottle cap with the eagle, with the black and the silver head, the two-headed eagle, which is the emblem of the Scottish Rite. So I'm like, what is this doing outside of my car, like where I'm parked? It wasn't there earlier, and I was indoors for 48 hours. And so I'm driving back from Santa Fe, and I was kind of alarmed because I couldn't see my speed. The odometer was broken. And not only was the odometer broken, but my mileage was stuck on 33. So what do you make of that? Well, I could add a couple of other things, but the other day I was talking about the old man in the mountain, the whole assassin cult, and the idea that they could send a message in subtle ways. Like if you're a target of an assassination or you're resisting something they want, you might wake up with a dagger next to your head, and that says, it conveys in a very overt way, we're in your house, you're not safe. And when I came across instances of what I felt to be tampering or gang stalking, it just made me wonder, is this some kind of way of subconsciously planting the seed or the understanding that you are in fact being monitored, watched, or you're eliminatable? Erica says, yes, Masons are felons on assignment for their plea deal. Oh, Armin says they're spreaders of MSM Plus. Well, look, it's basically what I would call a, well, it's hold on a second here. Let me get the mail. I have a package coming in. It's a book. We will be right back. Okay, so we're just going to take calls for the second hour. I'm going to go ahead and